What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast alongside the Senator Phil Perry. This is the aftermath. The Patriots are in London, and boy, there was a London falling out there. The Patriots lose 32-16 to the Jaguars. The Patriots looked across the table at the Jaguars and said, "You're a good chance for us to win. You're a good chance for us to get right. You're a good chance for us to start fast." They did so. They were up 10-0 early, Phil, and then the bottom fell out. This led to Jerod Mayo after the game proclaiming his team to be tissue paper soft.
Look, disappointing game. Disappointing game. We came out, we started fast. What I would say is, look, we're a soft football team across the board. We talk about what makes a tough football team. That's being able to run the ball, that's being able to stop the run, and that's being able to cover kicks, and we did none of those today. They controlled the ball for most of the day. You know, their run game averaged over 4.5 yards a carry. Our run game, not sure what the average was, but it wasn't good. Look, back to the drawing board. I mean, we can't sit here and pout. We just got to put a game together.
Phil, when I heard that comment, I thought, whoa, when you put it on the players like that with a finger point, they might point the finger right on back at you. But we have players really kind of rallying to the defense of Jerod Mayo. First was Kyle Duggar. Listen to this.
Kyle, Coach came in here, his exact words were, "We're soft across the board." Did he use those exact words to you guys in the locker room afterwards?
Yeah, he kept it real with us, and I'm glad he did. Yeah.
And then we didn't go to London, but Andrew Callahan did, so we're going to credit him for these quotes collected in the locker room. Phil, you got him.
This is Daniel Equale talking to Andrew Callahan saying, quote, Jerod just said everybody got to check their ego when they come in, and I agree with him. I feel like a lot of guys think too highly of themselves and have to check their ego and come in and just play as a team. I feel like if we play as a team, nobody can stop us. But if we go out there and we do our own thing and play outside the scheme, that's when we get beat. It's strong stuff.
Very strong stuff. Meanwhile, Kendrick Bourne also had something to say about egos on the offensive side of the ball.
He did. Kendrick Bourne, again, this is to Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald saying, quote, the time zone was definitely a factor, 9:30. That was a challenge. The energy could have been better, a lot better. We've got to find ways from within to fight adversity. We know we're going to play at 9:30 through the week. We need to understand that. Maybe wake up earlier. Find ways to fight that adversity first. That's the first battle. Playing Jacksonville is the second battle. If we struggle to win the first battle, we're going to be struggling to win the second. That's how I felt. That's how I feel now. And we've got to be better in that area.
The kids were tired?
It sounds like, boy, I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. There's a lot of words here, Tom, but he basically asked him, Andrew asked him, are you giving theoretical examples of things you could do to make sure that you have more energy, or did you actually see this happen? And Bourne says, quote, yeah, I would say, yeah. There's certain things we need to figure out that's within. That's how the energy feels. There's something else that's contributing to us having low energy, like we had good long drives, and that's when we need to play our hardest. But those drives, we start to get tired. So it sounds like he's making the claim. There's another quote here. Jeez, it says,
you know what? Give
personal decisions rather than staying up all night or eating whatever. Huh? Whatever it is, whatever makes us be better, we have to make those decisions to be better.
All right, there's something.
What were they doing in London?
This is a real-time podcast. We just finished our post-game show. We understood that we had quotes here from Andrew. So this is a whole nother layer of things to digest, which are not really even football-related. We're going to get to the football in a second. But what in God's name is he talking about? Is it germane to the conversation? And if so, it's really germane to it. Because if he's not just going off half-cocked and half the team's up playing video games until 3 a.m. and eating Starburst.
Or they're on the London Eye.
Or on the Eye, drinking Coke and Starburst and running out on the field and thinking that's going to hold up. It's not. It feels a little chaotic. As I've said a million times this offseason, the number one thing that this group had to do was to ooze competency. I talked about this in the postgame show. The Patriots have had a habit of not putting people in positions to succeed for going on 5 years, since 2020. Maybe even earlier than that, but I'll stick with 2020. Whether it was Mac Jones and putting him in a position to fail after 2021, whether it was Cole Strange in the second round, whether it was Bailey Zappi, you name it. And now they have myriad coaches and coordinators who are in their first jobs with a rebuilding team and a first-year head coach who has not had his hand on the reins of an entire team prior, with a bad roster and a first-time GM. And it just feels way more chaotic than it needed to be. And a lot of that is hoping against hope. And hope is a failed strategy, as some military leader said. And I think that the Kraft family hoped that things would work out okay post-Bill. They felt they did not want Bill in charge of the rebuild. They did not want Bill in charge of another young quarterback. They did not want Bill spending free agent money for them because they felt they needed to move on from Bill. And they hoped everybody would be ready. Nobody's ready. Nobody's ready, Phil.
Nobody's ready. And I just look at this game in particular, Tom. I mean, just to get back to those comments. I mean, they get out to a 10-0 lead. Did they just get tired? I mean, it looked like the run defense certainly got tired at one point because they couldn't stop anything that the Jaguars were throwing at them in that phase of the game. But was there something going on in London? I mean, are they just up late in their hotels? My guess is there was some sort of curfew the nights they were there, Friday and Saturday night. So I was joking about the London Eye. My guess is it's not that. But what is Kendrick Bourne trying to say here?
I mean,
don't be eating whatever and staying up late. I don't know. It's also a bad look when you have a bad look, whatever that means. You have your best receiver on the team who basically misses the vast majority of the game because he's ill, and they're sort of blaming the food in London on Pop Douglas's illness. So are they taking care of themselves properly? How much of that is on the coaching staff? How much of that is on the veteran players that are in the room? Is anybody holding each other to any kind of standard right now? Because you just lost to one of the worst teams in the NFL, and you got embarrassed doing it. And I wonder where the checks are.
There is seeming to be a little bit of a maturity level issue. We watched Jalen Polk, and we'll get to the football plenty, but I think that this is a mindset issue as well that is starting to develop and emerge with the team that is going to make all your football tweaks moot if you can't get your minds correct and pulling in the same direction. You had Jalen Polk, who has struggled incredibly for what I would consider to be a good and dependable receiver until he started dropping the football. Asked about it this week, he said, I have the best hands in the league. It's not a problem. I haven't had a problem. Well, he did have a problem. And the problem continued on Sunday with 2 definite drops, another drop when he got clobbered on a ball that he probably should have come back to instead of drifting backwards. Just put your foot in the ground, come back to it. And then he fell down on a 2-point conversion. Followed that up by posting on Instagram, ... a peace sign. Why on Instagram? Why? Why is Javon Baker proclaiming after the draft that he's going to get people up out of wheelchairs? And the next thing you know, he can't because he's so electrifying and he can't get on the field. Why is Tyquan Thornton, a 2022 second-round pick, unusable at this juncture? Why is Daniel Akwale or Devon Godshaw having to point out that there are players who are a little selfish on the defensive line? Who are they alluding to? Are they alluding to some of the better players on the team? I.e., whether it's Christian Gonzalez in the back end, whether it's, Keon White up front. Who is it? And how old are they? And is it a maturity problem with the team in terms of how you're doing your job professionally? Last point I'll make is when you're missing, I'll start on offense, but we're talking defense, but it goes for both sides. When you're missing David Andrews and Christian Barmore and Jawan Bentley and Jabril Peppers, players who were your on-field leaders in many ways and your locker room leaders, regardless of the reasons that they're not on the team right now, it hurts. It strips leadership. It makes everybody have to move up a level in their own leadership, and it moves everybody up a level in their responsibilities to the team. And I just think they're trying to get blood from a stone in a number of different ways.
I think you're right. And I just would add to all of that, it makes it hard for anybody to get sort of a toehold in terms of sending any kind of message or having any sort of message resonate with anyone when on the field it looks as bad as it did on Sunday. Because they just got beat up. They got bullied. They got run all over. They couldn't run themselves, and they couldn't cover a punt return that led to a touchdown that ended up sort of allowing this game to get away from them as they're going into halftime when they started the game with a 10-0 lead. So add it to the list of issues, Tom. I mean, we could talk about anything off the field with the London trip. We can talk about a lack of leadership, but I would say the lack of toughness, and Jerod Mayo spoke to this, but the lack of toughness to me might be the most alarming thing of anything to come out of London.
And that's what my list here has: run game humiliation, followed by AVP altering plan, followed by penalties, followed by Polk, followed by time management, followed by May, which can be one optimistic area, followed by how do you fix. So let's stick with that run game humiliation, because when I'm watching it play out, part of me is thinking, well, it's scheme. You got to do something. You have to figure something out. And then part of me is like, well, are they tuckered? Do they not have the people there on the field right now to deal with Jacksonville? I mean, look, I was a little fella. You were bigger than me when you played your high school football. There were days when I was like, I don't care what I do here. I'm going to get shoved back 12 yards if this kid decides he really wants to shove me back 12 yards. I don't think the Patriots are in that situation, but I thought that they were closer. But when we have a Quale say, I thought they were getting overwhelmed based on talent. But Aquale is indicating that it's not based on talent. It's based on guys not doing their jobs. Same with Duggar.
And that, I'm sure there are pieces to that, but I would also assume at some point when the Jaguars are in the middle of a 17-play stretch where they do nothing but hand it off, you're probably a little tired. And you can be as technically sound as you want to be, and you're still going to get run over. The Jaguars, by the way, they did all this in terms of the run game stuff without their starting left tackle, Cam Robinson. So it's not like they're going against an all-world group. It's not a bad group. They've run the football efficiently all year this year. But the Patriots have to be better than that. It doesn't matter really how tired you are or how talented you are. I just look at that and say, that kind of game leaves you with so many questions that I'm not sure it's realistic to have them all fixed in a week or two.
Before we get to AVP, let's talk about the coordinator on the defensive side of the ball, DeMarcus Covington, and not having any kind of an answer at all to supply. If somebody's going to do that to you, don't you have to just load the box with every human and say, okay, you know what? Sorry, but we're going to have to play one-on-one out back, and we're going to play 7 guys in the A gap.
Yeah, yes. Just line them up single file. Yeah.
We're not going to let you do that to
I like
us.
that. I like that idea. And you know what? I'm a little bit surprised they didn't, because they so frequently trust their corners and defensive backs to just play man-to-man and just have no safety help in the middle. They play a lot of cover zero, or they have this year at least, because they like their corners, and they should. That's, you could argue it's the most talented group they have on either side of the ball right now. So why not do that and just get everybody in the box? 8 guys. And just say, hey, just defend the run first, and we'll just worry about the receivers down the field if we really have to, and try to force them to beat us that way. But Ted Johnson was talking about some of the schematic stuff you could do. You can slant the line a little bit. You could send more run blitzes. I thought they tried that late. Even that didn't look like it was working. So again, it's a lack of personnel. I guess it's got to be to some degree a lack of reacting in-game schematically, and it's fatigue. You add it all up, and you get what you get, 171 yards on the ground for Jacksonville.
Close to 600 yards in the last 3 games on the ground between the Miami Dolphins, the Houston Texans, and now Jacksonville. This was a game the Patriots were 1-5 coming in, had lost 5 straight since their win against Cincinnati, and it looked like, okay, this is your spot. Jacksonville is taking on water. They got players talking about quitting, and the Patriots had them really on the ropes early. It's 10-0. Had it not been for a Kendrick Bourne drop, and Drake Maye was 26 for 33, and there were probably 3 or 4 drops in there, 2 also near picks, be that as it may. But you have the Patriots offense executing in a way that you hoped. I looked at Phil in the green room because he didn't make the trip. I said, Phil, he's dealing. Phil said, yeah, he's dealing. And the dealing stopped, not because Drake Maye didn't have his tuxedo on and still ready to deal. He had the cards taken out of his hand. He was not a dealer anymore because Alex Van Pelt decided to establish the run. Why?
Well, the why is a good question. I think on the face of it, we could say why you would do that is because you do have a rookie quarterback playing behind a group of backups on the offensive line, essentially. And one of the best ways to protect your rookie quarterback is to just not have him drop back all that frequently at all. Mm-hmm. Don't even allow Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen to come off the edge and get after him. But Tom, there were 8 runs after that first drive, which was beautiful. I didn't love the very first play, but that's nitpicking. But a beautiful first drive. They're using motion at the snap. They're throwing it down the field. They're throwing it over and over and over again. I think they only had 2 called runs in that drive. Who knows if Drake Maye changed any of those plays at the line of scrimmage and turned those to passes. But it looks tremendous. They're a well-oiled machine on that first drive. Then they have 8 runs from that point on in the first half that go for a total of -2 yards. It's absolutely abysmal. And you would think after run, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, you get away from it and you put the ball in the hands of a guy that, does he not look like your best player right now on either side of the ball? He does.
And that's where Alex Van Pelt, look, we have plenty of people in the media corps and probably the fan base who are happy to say Alex Van Pelt's going to be a disaster. And I wanted to give him plenty of time because I think it's better to collect the data. Maybe there's a reason that he's 52. He's a victim of circumstance and hadn't been a play caller prior. Maybe it's not related to an idea that he's not really suited for it. And maybe he still might be suited for it and he's on a cold streak. But the cold streak is becoming, to me, less trend and more reality. And this was a bad game. Last week was a bad game. You have a rookie quarterback. Bad, I say, in terms of, because I don't know, I try and be realistic. If I'm going to say something's bad, I have to say, well, what would you have done differently? And what intel do you have that play caller doesn't that makes it more reasonable for you to do this or for you to have that opinion? But just on the face of it, I can only go with what I know. If you want to keep Drake Maye in his first start out of 3rd and 9, don't run it into the middle of the line twice on your first possession or your second possession for that matter. And if you want to keep the ball in your offense moving down the field in chunk plays, then don't run it up the middle. Don't try to run wide. Don't try to do something that you haven't seen work when something else is working. Throwing to the perimeter with Pop Douglas. Trying chunk plays with Hunter Henry and seam throws. Getting it outside. Getting it to the perimeter. Trying to move the ball downfield and putting it in the hands of your best player. So that's where I'm pissed about the play calling. Because he has done, Alex Van Pelt, a good job on the face of it developing Drake Maye. And we all agreed that was the most important part. But if he can't keep the offense moving in a positive direction and seems to just fall back on this default, establish the run stuff, it's self-defeating.
I didn't like it either. I will say I thought there was improvement from this week's first drive, obviously production-wise, but just in terms of approach versus last week's first drive. So there's some growth there as a play caller from Alex Van Pelt. In the second half, it's almost like I have a hard time giving him anything other than like an incomplete. It felt like they didn't have the ball in the second half. And they did end up scoring a touchdown. It does feel like, Tom, should they just go 2-minute every time they have the ball now? Because it feels like every time they're rushing and and it felt a little bit that way because they threw it so damn much on that first drive. Credit to them that whenever they go with what looks like a 2-minute offense, they have some success. So you can't build the whole plane out of 2-minute, unfortunately. You have to do some other stuff. I just would have moved away from the run a little sooner than he did today. They only finished, I think, with 15 rushing attempts, and Drake Maye had a handful of those. So they didn't run it really at all in the second half.
And the flip side of it is you're protecting your defense as well when you try and run the football and take some time, give them some time on the sideline, because worst case scenario is you go 1 throw, 2 throws, 3 throws, you're out, no time is moved off the clock, and you have these guys back on the field after they just get the ball rammed down their face for 8 minutes.
You know what you should not like from this game? In addition to all those things you've already mentioned when it comes to Alex Van Pelt's performance, not much for your guy, Kayshon Boutte, in this game, which I didn't really understand. He had the beautiful fade ball down the sideline, makes a great catch, has to sort of lunge for it. It's a good ball from Drake Maye. It
drew a DPI.
Only 2 targets.
He drew a DPI.
Did draw defensive pass interference. And meanwhile, you've got Jalen Polk with... I'm still scrolling down the box score here to find his stat line, Tom. Still scrolling.
3 targets.
3 targets. I would say maybe 3 drops. We didn't get a replay on the third one. At least 2 drops, 3 targets, and he fell down on a 2-point conversion. Why did he play as much as he played?
I don't know. I don't know how you can. They got 1 or 2 choices, Phil. They either put Jalen Polk down for a bit, use him very sparingly, or they come out next week and they just drill the ball at him 6 straight times on the first 2 possessions, just gunning it at his chest.
Force feed him until he figures it out?
Yep. If you have to go 3 and out, just fix guys one at a time. in game. One guy, one at a time. We're going to fix everybody.
It's like taking a catcher with the yips.
Yeah.
And just putting them in the cage and
Once
just say, here's a bucket of balls.
Jalen, once you
have at it, buddy.
Jalen, we're going to throw it to you until you catch them. Okay? Everybody, watch Jalen. Clear it out.
I'm not sure that's
Clear
a
it
great
out.
idea.
Clear it out.
I don't think that's going to
Hey,
work all that well
one at a time. But disappointing performance there. And also disappointing is, I'm sure you people felt the same way. It's 10:30 in the morning. You just watched the first quarter where Drake Maye looked absolutely scintillating. Patriots defense forced a punt, and you knew that Jacksonville was on the ropes already. You're looking at Doug Peterson on the sideline. You go, they're screwed. And then the running game comes in. Then they start getting gashed. And then Brian Thomas is catching bombs. And then the penalties start. And the penalties, folks. And then there's a punt return touchdown. Can you imagine the 45-minute flip from 9:30 to 10:15 and then 10:15 to 11 o'clock? It's not good. And the penalties, Phil, we saw them committed by, in key positions, Hunter Henry on a 3rd and 5 that turned it into a 3rd and 10. Mike Onwenu on a 3rd and 10 that turned it into a 3rd and 20. And Jelani Tavai, who's a good player when Jawan Bentley is next to him, turning a 1-point conversion try into a 2-point conversion try that they converted by throwing on Christian Gonzalez, who had a bad time with Brian Thomas throughout the game. Those are your better players. So I'm talking blood from a stone with trying to stop teams because there's just not enough talent out there. And then you're getting that kind of performance. God bless him. Hunter Henry was 8 for 92 in the receiving. But that was, I'm sure that he would say the same thing. Bad penalty.
Bad penalty. It's some of your best players that are letting you down. You're right. And the Doug Peterson thing. Was he not about 10 minutes away from being fired maybe at half?
Shad Khan was bouncing back and forth in his chair. They went to the double box on Shad Khan and Robert Kraft.
If they go down 10-0 into the locker room against the 1-5 New England Patriots,
He ain't coming out.
he might not have come back out. Because not only was it 10-0, but they were shooting themselves in the foot. They had 3 defensive offsides penalties.
Oh, right. They were
One
worse.
was technically, I believe, a neutral zone infraction. But they had 3 of the same penalty, essentially, on the same Patriots drive. One where, nice hard count from Drake Maye. It might have been Alex Van Pelt in his ear saying, hey, let's see if we can get him up for another one. But that was a team that had, it looked like, completely given up. They were already talking about it before the game even started. And they get down double digits to the Patriots, and the Patriots just give it right back to them with all those moments that you mentioned, and they go down at halftime. It's just, they can't get out of their own way, New England.
Last topic before we get to Drake Maye, who we like. The time management. My God. Phil, do you got the game book open?
I do.
So the last drive of the first half, they just had the friggin' punt return. Now it's whatever it was there, 10, 16, 23, 10, 22, 10.
22-10.
It's 22-10. And the Patriots got the ball back. And how much time was there when they got the ball back?
134.
Don't blame them for trying to do something here. But what happened?
You know how they started? Jermichael Hasty, right tackle, 4 yards.
So a
minus 4 yards.
5'8", 3rd down back for -4. Who did score a touchdown?
Incomplete to Demario Douglas. Short middle to Hunter Henry for 11 yards on a 3rd and 14. Then you've got timeouts and you've got your punt.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. Doug Peterson really screwed up by not burning his timeouts after the Jermichael Hasty run into the middle. You ran a 3rd down back into right tackle. Did you think you had him in bad personnel and he was going to break an 18-yard? You ran a 3rd down back for a -4. So what do you want to be right there? Do you want to be a team that is trying to move down the field, which you should have been in this instance because Jacksonville stinks, and so do you, but you're actually playing good with the new quarterback? So Jacksonville then gets the ball. They don't do nothing because of a good punt by Bryce Behringer and a stop. But then at the end of the game, you're calling timeouts when you're not going to win. What was it, 25-16? There's a minute 52 left. Phil,
25-16, that's right.
So there's a minute left, and you start burning timeouts when you're down 9. Inviting another score because, of course, Jacksonville's going to say, well, screw these guys. We're going to score it then, which they do. How much time was left when
So they started calling the timeouts with 1:49 left in the game.
All right, 1:49 left in the game. You're going to call timeouts. Jacksonville has the opportunity to either score a touchdown on you or make it 28-16, 12-point game. Why bother? You call them, they score, it's 32-16, now the rabbit's out of the bag. You try and move it down the field the other way, which is fine with me. Again, garbage time, Tutti garbage time at that point. But then after you get a penalty, you stop trying to move it down the field. Either you're in or you're out. You're in or you're out. Pick a lane and stay in the lane. Philosophically, what do you want to be about in these situations? Again, first-year head coach, first-year defensive coordinator, first-year offensive coordinator, first-year offensive line coach, a spate of injuries all over the roster for the first-year GM to try and fill. There are too many people learning on the job for the New England Patriots right now. And they sensed that it might look this way, but hope against hope and whistling past the graveyard, they thought that it might not. But now it does, and there's a little bit of chaos in the locker room as coach points fingers at players, players point fingers at each other.
It's a bad scene. I just come back to, when we're focusing on this game in particular, this being the aftermath pod and all. Hunter Henry's not learning on the job.
No.
Micah Wenou's not learning on the job. Christian Gonzalez isn't learning on the job. Like, these guys, they need better play from their best players. And I would include Jalen Polk in that scenario because he has 2 passes obviously hit his hands. He's the guy that I called right after he was drafted, and maybe I wasn't giving Demario Douglas enough credit, but we were on the air live when they drafted him in the second round, and I said, this guy might be already, right now, your best receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was. I didn't hate the pick by any stretch, but you look back on it now, boy, is this another case of a guy where you're not sure how he's going to handle adversity because he didn't see a ton of it in college. And now I won't pretend to say that I know every in and out of his college career, but I remember us saying that a lot about Mac Jones. When he was hitting some adversity here, was, well, how could they know how he's going to handle it? He was at Alabama. They just blew through everybody. Washington's offense kind of blew through everybody. I wonder if he's ever dealt with anything like this before. He's a guy that they need, Tom, and they need all of their best players to perform at their best to even have a chance in these games. They didn't get that today.
The Patriots, by the end of 2024, need to appear to be a plucky, competitive, gritty, do anything to win kind of team. They might be an annoying little terrier that you can just shake your leg and he falls off, but they need to be something that you don't really want to encounter because it's going to be a pain in the ass. Right now, against even the worst team in the league, Jacksonville, at least who was in the worst situation last week, it was Jacksonville. Now the Patriots are in the worst situation until further notice, unless Carolina loses by 38. They're not plucky. They're not plucky. They're not gritty. They're not plucky. They're not gritty. They're not easy to look at. They're not plucky. They're not gritty. They're not easy to look at. And they're hard to root for.
They're not smart or tough either, I would say.
Throw those in. There's 6 things that
based on what we've watched so far through 7 games.
The goal was to be a team that other teams didn't want to play by the end of the year because they were smart, tough, physical. They're the opposite of those things.
Can you get it turned around mid-season? Or is this just a wash now? Because that's what I worried about going into this game, was that we as analysts and as reporters and as people who follow this team as closely as we do, that if they lost this game, never mind the way in which they actually lost it, but if they lost this game, you just would be looking at a long, painful, meaningless 2024 season that still has a lot of time left. They're a month and a half away from their bye, Tom. They don't even have a bye week to look forward to.
Well, here's the crazy thing about this is the Patriots right now are where Jacksonville was last week, and they're going to be there all week long. And then they're going to see the Jets at home next week and Aaron Rodgers. And that's the team that sent them on their slide to 24-0 in a 24-0 loss.
24-3. I think your guy, Joey Slide,
Joey Slide, the kicker guy?
Yeah, he got 3 in that one.
24-3, huh? It might have been 24-0 when anyway, be that as it may. And the Patriots are worse than they were then. Excuse me, hiccups. I'm starving here. It's 3 in the afternoon.
You hiccup when you get hungry?
I don't know. Apparently,
Your body should be donated to science at some point.
all the cheese, all the
Just
cheese.
how much. This is what dairy can do to a man.
All right. Anyway, we got to get out of here. It's been a long day already. We've made Drake Maye look good, huh?
I thought he looked good. I thought actually it was an improvement on last week. There were 2 very near picks, right? And so if those are caught, maybe I'm not saying that. But I just thought the volume of bad plays was reduced from last week to this week. Now, again, I said this to you on postgame. That might be because the volume of plays, and we'll have to look at it at the end of the day, felt reduced. It felt like they didn't really have the ball in the second half, so not a lot of time to make mistakes. But, man, I thought the ball was out on time. I thought he made some really nice plays on third down. I thought the first touchdown to Jermichael Hasty was really nifty by him, even though it wasn't an impressive physical play necessarily. Unblocked rusher coming right at him. Get it out of your hands. Let your playmaker make a play in space. Fastball touchdown to KJ Osborne, of all people, at the end of the game there.
Nice throw to Hunter Henry.
Nice throw to Hunter Henry.
Contested one.
Yep, down the middle of the
Great
field.
throw to Booty.
So he's what you got.
Everybody nicely to Hunter Henry or Austin Hooper right at the beginning of the game.
Couple tight window throws down the middle of the field to those tight ends. I felt like there were a handful where there were guys really on those players' backs, and those are the kinds of throws you weren't getting with Jacoby Brissett. It was you have to see it open. It felt like for those throws to get made. So he's aggressive. He's accurate in stretches. He can be inaccurate too, and he's got great touch down the field. So you have to come away again encouraged by his performance, but I would say discouraged overall by the loss because this might have been their last truly winnable game, Tom. And they got annihilated.
They'll stumble into a win at some point. These teams always do. Again, I've used 1993 as an example. That team was 1-11 before Drew Bledsoe and Bill Parcells combined to start winning games. It was a 7-2 loss to the Cincinnati Bengals in there. Okay. So in the next year they were in the playoffs.
I'm not saying they won't win another one, but doesn't like if you're forecasting games, is there going to be another game on the schedule that you feel better about than you did about this one?
You never know when you're going to get a Snoop Huntley situation.
That's fair. Okay. So now you got to depend on Snoop Huntley.
But that didn't help the last time.
No.
All right, folks, that's the Aftermath podcast. Make sure you watch for the breakdown tomorrow. Ted and Phil will be coming at you, and I will have quick slants on Tuesday. Have a great week.